Some secrets are worth dying for, others are worth living to expose. At St. Catherine's Girls' Boarding School in Lagos, Nigeria, the dormitories hummed with teenage energy. Cliques formed, friendships bloomed, dreams took shape. But beneath the surface of uniforms and textbooks, darkness was growing, a darkness that would claim one young life and nearly destroy two more. This is the story of how two ordinary students became heroes by refusing to stay silent. A story of exploitation, tragedy, courage, and redemption. By the end, you'll understand why speaking up, even when terrified, can mean the difference between life and death. This happened in 2019. Names have been changed to protect the survivors, but every word of this story is true. Warning: this story contains mature themes including human trafficking, exploitation of minors, and tragedy. Viewer discretion is advised. Stay until the end. This story could save a life, maybe yours. Act 1: The Hierarchy. The social order. Every boarding school has its social hierarchy. St. Catherine's was no different. At the top, the influential girls, Zara, Amara, and Grace. Bold, elegant, untouchable. They ruled the school like queens. Their word was law among students. In the middle, the studious ones, girls who came to learn, graduate, and move forward with their lives. At the bottom, the naive newcomers, first years who quickly learned not to cross the wrong people. The influential girls controlled everything. Even the prefects feared standing up to them. Meet Chioma, the silent observer. Chioma was different. Quiet, intelligent, observant. She preferred books to drama, silence to conflict. She kept her head down and her grades up. But sharing a dormitory with Zara, Amara, and Grace meant witnessing troubling things. Things that kept her awake at night. Things that whispered of danger. She noticed patterns. Mysterious late-night departures. Expensive perfumes forbidden by school rules. Designer shoes hidden under beds. Exhausted faces at morning assembly. Conversations that stopped abruptly when she entered. Chioma wasn't the only one paying attention. Few people knew that the girls' dormitory hid a dark secret, and at its center was Madame Folake, the dorm matron. Madame Folake, the predator in plain sight. Officially, Madame Folake maintained order and discipline. She was strict, efficient, respected by the administration. In reality, she ran a clandestine operation. She carefully selected certain girls, those she knew would play along and keep quiet. She groomed them with small favors, expensive gifts, promises of connections. Then she recruited them for special assignments. Late at night, she would sneak them out through a secret exit. A black SUV would be waiting. The girls would return before dawn, pockets full of cash, eyes hollow with secrets. Some students knew the truth, but no one dared speak. Everyone understood the consequences of crossing Madame Folake. The system was perfect, until it wasn't. Act 2: The Midnight Departures. The pattern emerges. One Friday night, after lights out and the usual silence settled, Zara, Amara, and Grace stayed awake. At exactly midnight, a soft tap came at the window. Madame Folake's voice, barely above a whisper. "Get ready. We leave in 5 minutes." The girls exchanged knowing glances and quickly changed. Form-fitting dresses, high heels, heavy makeup to disguise their youthful features. They tiptoed out, avoiding every creaking floorboard. Chioma, pretending to sleep, watched through half-closed eyes, her heart pounding. Too terrified to intervene, she lay frozen as they disappeared into the night. The journey into darkness. Outside the school gates, an elegant black SUV waited, engine running. At the wheel sat a man wearing dark sunglasses. Without a word, the girls climbed into the back. The vehicle launched into the night. The journey to the city was made in heavy silence, only accompanied by the soft hum of the car radio. After almost an hour, they arrived at a nightclub illuminated by flashing neon lights. The air smelled of expensive perfume and alcohol. "Remember the rules," Madame Folake told them firmly. "Don't ask questions. Don't speak unnecessarily. Do what you're told, and everything will be fine." She knew how this worked. She had done it dozens of times. Inside the den of vice, upon entering, a wave of excitement washed over them. The club was full of wealthy men, laughing, drinking, throwing stacks of bills around like paper. All eyes turned to them, examining them like precious goods. Madame Folake led them directly to the VIP section where 3 older men were drinking expensive alcohol. One of them, a pot-bellied man wearing several gold rings, flashed a wide smile. "Madame Folake, you always bring the best," he said, patting the seat next to him. Zara flashed her brightest smile, knowing exactly what to do. Amara and Grace followed her lead, settling in next to the men and striking up flirtatious conversation. The glasses lined up. Money changed hands. The night unfolded as usual. Return at dawn. Back at the dormitory, Chioma tossed and turned in her bed, unable to find sleep. She knew something was wrong. What if everything collapsed one day? What if someone discovered what was really happening? But in that nightclub, amid wealth and secrecy, Zara, Amara, and Grace cared about nothing but enjoying the moment. They didn't know a terrible price was waiting for them. Act 3, The First Tragedy. Grace, consequences arrive. A few weeks later, the atmosphere in the room became heavy. Grace, sitting on her bed, hands trembling, stared at the floor. "I don't know what to do," she admitted in a barely audible voice. "I missed my period last month, but I thought it was stress. I didn't pay attention to it. Then this month, nothing. I started feeling strange." She swallowed hard before continuing. "So I borrowed a pregnancy test from a senior girl." A silence. Then, "It was positive." Zara took a long breath. "Are you serious?" Amara sat down next to Grace, her face pale. "This is bad. Really bad. If the school finds out, if your parents discover..." She stopped, shaking her head. "What are you going to do?" Grace looked down, helpless. "I don't know. That's why I'm telling you." Madame Folake's false solution. They all turned to Zara, the most outspoken of the group. "We have to tell Madame Folake," she said. "She'll know what to do." At midnight, the girls left the dormitory on tiptoe and headed to Madame Folake's quarters. They knocked softly. The door opened almost immediately. The matron, in her nightgown, arms crossed, observed them with suspicious eyes. "What are you doing here?" she asked, scrutinizing their nervous faces. Zara cleared her throat. "Madam, there's a problem." Madame Folake raised her eyebrows. "What problem?" Grace stepped forward, trembling. "I'm pregnant." A heavy silence fell. Then Madame Folake spat. "You fool! I didn't give you condoms for nothing!" "I had one," Grace murmured. "But this time the man said he could pull out. He promised." Madame Folake laughed bitterly. "And you believed him? Men will say anything to get what they want." Grace's lips trembled. Madame Folake sighed, shaking her head. "There's no going back now. We have to fix this before anyone notices." She went to a drawer, pulled out a small package of pills and handed them to Grace. "Take 2 now, 2 more in 6 hours. Do exactly what I say and it will be over." "Will it work?" Grace asked, her voice broken. Madame Folake's expression barely softened. "Yes, but never make this mistake again." Grace, hands trembling, took the pills and swallowed them with a gulp of water. What she didn't know was that these pills would kill her. The horror unfolds. The next morning, everything seemed normal until a muffled moan woke Amara. She found Grace curled up, her face twisted in pain. "What's wrong?" I don't know, my stomach." Amara pulled back the sheet and turned pale. "There's blood everywhere." Grace looked down, terrified, seeing the dark red stains on her bed. "It's too much," she whispered. "It hurts." "We have to clean up before someone sees," Zara said hastily. Chioma, pretending to sleep, felt her heart racing. She knew what was happening, but fear paralyzed her. Grace is dead? The morning bell rang, waking the last sleepers. But Grace didn't move. Amara approached. "Grace, get up. It's almost time for assembly." No response. She opened her eyes. They were glassy, lost in pain. I can't get up," Grace murmured weakly. Amara exchanged a worried look with Zara, then rushed out to get Madame Folake. The hours that followed were a nightmare. Grace was transported to the school clinic. The nurses bustled about, but her pulse was weak. The hemorrhaging wouldn't stop. "She needs to be transferred." "This is beyond our capabilities," one of them murmured. Grace's parents were contacted. Her mother arrived running, frantic. But it was too late. Grace let out a long sigh in the car on the way to the hospital. Then she stopped breathing. Her mother's piercing scream echoed throughout the hospital. A young life had just been extinguished. But the story was only beginning. Act 4. Ngozi's arrival. A new student, a new ally. After Grace's death, the school's atmosphere had completely changed. Whispers rose in the hallways. Students circulated with eyes full of questions. But no one said anything. Madame Folake had lied to the principal. She said Grace had snuck out on her own, that she was a troubled girl. The lie had worked. A few weeks later, a new student arrived, Ngozi. Well-groomed, calm, observant, but also warm, she quickly became liked. Very soon, she and Chioma grew close. Still shaken by Grace's death, Chioma found some comfort with her. At night, when the lights were out, Chioma began confiding bits of truth about what was really happening. "Madame Folake does more than just supervise," she whispered in the dark. Ngozi turned her head slightly. "What do you mean?" "She's connected. That's all I can say for now." Ngozi observes. Within a few days, after observing Amara and Zara, Ngozi began to piece things together. She noticed their nocturnal outings with Madame Folake, their clothes that weren't part of the uniform, luxury shoes hidden under Amara's bed, expensive perfume forbidden by the rules, their tired look in the early morning. One afternoon, during dinner, Chioma and Ngozi sat apart. "I want to help them," Chioma murmured, picking at her beans. "But I don't know how." Ngozi's eyes narrowed. "We can't say anything to the administration. Madame Folake covers everything. But we could warn their parents." Chioma nodded immediately. "Yes, that's a better idea." The failed confrontation. Later they decided to speak directly to the girls concerned. Zara was lying on her bed, painting her nails, while Amara, sitting by the window, looked outside. "We need to talk," Chioma said. Zara barely looked up. "About what?" "About all this," Ngozi replied. "The lies, the nocturnal outings, the danger. Grace died because of this." Zara sat up, her face hardening. "Listen carefully. If I hear either of you repeating this nonsense to anyone outside this room, you'll regret it." Amara, uncomfortable, looked back and forth between Zara and Chioma without saying anything. "But," Chioma began. "No buts," Zara cut her off. "Mind your own business." A tense silence settled. The conversation died before it really began. If they couldn't convince the girls, they would have to find another way. Act 5: The Secret Investigation. The Night Mission. That night, Ngozi and Chioma made a bold decision. "We have to follow them," Ngozi whispered. "Find evidence. Names. Numbers. Something." "It's dangerous," Chioma replied, trembling. "Staying silent is even more dangerous," Ngozi retorted. The next day, they waited patiently. In the late afternoon, when Amara and Zara went to the basketball court, Ngozi said, "Now." They rushed to Zara's corner. Ngozi opened her small metal box and quickly leafed through her books and notebooks. Chioma searched her bag. Then Ngozi found a small diary stuck between two textbooks. Flipping through it, she found mostly song lyrics and quotes, until she came across a number scribbled, "Mom," and another noted, "Uncle Chidi, driver." "That's it," she whispered, pointing to the page. Chioma's eyes lit up. "We've got something." They quickly copied the numbers onto a piece of paper and put everything back exactly as they found it. The nocturnal surveillance. That evening, they pretended to sleep early. Around midnight, Madame Folake came knocking again. Amara and Zara dressed quickly and left with her. But this time, Ngozi and Chioma followed them. The night air was cold and calm. They moved cautiously, lit by a small flashlight wrapped in red cellophane to soften the beam. Their hearts beat hard with each step. The forbidden construction site behind the school was dark and isolated. Tall grass swayed in the breeze. A wall of collapsed blocks served as a secret passage to the outside. Ngozi and Chioma hid behind a pile of abandoned wheelbarrows, watching the others slip through a narrow hole in the fence and disappear down a bush path. They followed, crouched, holding their breath. The crucial discovery. After about 10 minutes, they spotted a shiny black SUV parked under a large mango tree. A man got out, dressed in an elegant white boo-boo, adjusting his gold watch. He appeared aged, probably in his late 50s, with a thick beard and a prominent belly. Madame Folake stepped forward. "Good evening, Chief. These are the girls." Ngozi's eyes widened. She elbowed Chioma and whispered, "Write that name down." "Just Chief," Chioma replied, scribbling in her notebook. "But maybe we can find the plate later." The man gave a satisfied little laugh. "Good. I hope they're well trained." "They know the rules, sir," Madame Folake replied. As the girls climbed into the SUV, Ngozi leaned slightly to see the license plate. Her heart was pounding. "Do you see it?" she breathed. "Yes," Chioma replied. She quickly noted the number, LAG 847KJ. The vehicle started, raising a cloud of dust. Ngozi and Chioma rushed through the bushes, crawled under the fence, and slipped into the dormitory through the laundry room window. Their hands were scratched, their legs covered in dust, but they had what they needed. Evidence. Act 6: The Disappearance. The Fatal Morning. The next morning, the bells woke Ngozi and Chioma with a start. Ngozi rubbed her eyes and sat up, then froze. Chioma, getting up, had the same reflex. Amara and Zara's beds were perfectly made. They hadn't come back. Their eyes met, a flash of fear in them. In the courtyard, under the morning sun, St. Catherine's students entered the assembly hall. Ngozi and Chioma stayed apart, scanning the crowd, praying to see Amara and Zara. But they still weren't there. 3 days of terror. All day, Ngozi was unable to concentrate. Her pen tapped nervously on her notebook. Her eyes landed on the door every time it creaked. Chioma was no better. She stared at the board with an empty gaze, pretending to write while her mind wandered. One day passed, then two. The beds remained empty, their belongings exactly where they had left them. Madame Folake, meanwhile, continued her routine. She marked their names as present on the registers and greeted students, feigning normalcy. But something had changed about her. Her steps were slower, her eyes agitated. She kept checking her phone and sighing. In the darkness, after lights out, Chioma whispered from her bunk. 3 days, Ngozi. They've been gone 3 days. I know, Ngozi murmured in the dark. Something's really wrong. Chioma's voice trembled. We can't just wait. If we don't speak up, we'll be next. We have to tell someone, Ngozi said. Someone we can trust. The form teacher, Chioma proposed. Ngozi nodded. Yes, tomorrow. The silence had lasted long enough. Act 7, The Courage to Speak. The Revelation. The next day during recess they slipped discreetly into their form teacher's office. Miss Eddies, known for being strict but fair, was one of the few teachers who genuinely cared about students. Surprised to see them at her door, she looked up. Ngozi, Chioma, what is it? They entered and closed the door behind them. Ngozi's hands trembled as she gripped Chioma's arm. Ma'am, we need to talk to you, she said in a low voice. It's about Zara and Amara. Miss Edis's face changed immediately. What about them? They've been missing since Sunday night, Chioma replied hastily. What? Miss Edis exclaimed, straightening up. Why hasn't anyone reported this to me? No one knows except Madame Folake, Ngozi added. Then they told everything. The nocturnal outings through the construction site fence, the black SUV, the man they heard called Chief, the license plate LAG 847KJ, the phone numbers found in Zara's diary. They handed over the paper where Chioma had written everything down. Miss Adis's face paled. Are you sure? Yes, ma'am, they replied in unison. The investigation begins. Miss Edis stood up immediately, locked the door, and picked up her phone. Meanwhile, in her quarters, Madame Folake paced nervously around her room. She had been turning her phone on and off for hours. She had tried calling the chief several times, without success. Panic was setting in. Where had the girls gone? Why hadn't he brought them back? In the principal's office, Ngozi and Chioma repeated their story. Miss Adis, standing by their side, confirmed every detail. The principal, Mr. Okonkwo, a serious-looking man in his 50s, adjusted his glasses on the tip of his nose and carefully read the notes. This is a very serious matter. We will act immediately. The confrontation. Madame Folake was summoned. She entered, trying to remain calm. Yes, sir? We've received reports that 2 girls under your responsibility have been missing for 3 days. What do you know about this? She paused, frowned. Sir, that's not true. They must be somewhere on campus, maybe hiding. You marked them present all week? The principal noted. Yes, sir. I thought they were in class, she replied quickly. Chioma stepped forward. Sir, she knows what happened. We saw her that night. We followed her. Madame Folake's eyes widened. We saw them leave with her, Ngozi continued firmly. We noted the SUV's license plate number and the man's name. He took them that night, and they never came back. The principal frowned and pressed the intercom to call the security officer. Within the hour, the police were contacted. With the details provided, including license plate LAG 847KJ, an investigation was opened. Madame Folake was immediately taken in for questioning. For the first time in days, Ngozi and Chioma could sit in silence on their bed, hands trembling under the weight of what they had just done. They didn't know if Amara and Zara would be found, but they had spoken. The silence was finally broken. Act 8: The Rescue. The Hunt. Thanks to the meticulous investigation and precise information provided by the two girls, the police traced the license plate to the estate of a wealthy businessman outside Lagos. The man known as Chief Emeka enjoyed solid political connections and a reputation that inspired fear. But that didn't deter law enforcement. Armed with a warrant, police stormed his mansion protected by high gates and thick walls. The chief tried to play innocent, claiming he had nothing to hide. The agents searched every corner until the basement, where they discovered a wooden panel sealed behind a large decorative shelf. After forcing it open, they revealed a narrow, damp passage into the darkness. Descending the dark staircase, a faint musty smell enveloped them. At the end of the corridor, a tiny room lit by a flickering bulb. And there, in a corner, two figures tied up and gagged. Amara and Zara. When the officers freed them, Amara collapsed in sobs while Zara clung to one of the female police officers, trembling without being able to speak. They were alive. Barely, but alive. The reunion. They were immediately taken to the police station where their parents, in tears, had been waiting for hours. The mothers threw themselves on their daughters, holding them in their arms as if they never wanted to let go. Amara and Zara told everything. The kidnapping, the threats, the dark room where they were held. How they had heard about a ritual ceremony planned for the third night. The very night they were found. If the police had arrived one day later, they would be dead. Zara's mother, overwhelmed with guilt and gratitude, took Ngozi and Chioma in her arms. "If it wasn't for you girls," she said crying, "my Zara would be dead. I owe you everything. You're heroes." Act 9: Justice. The network collapses. At the police station, Madame Folake was confronted with all the evidence. Suspicious transaction documents, payments from powerful men, missing persons reports from other schools where she had worked, testimonies from the rescued girls. Ngozi and Chioma's notes. Cornered, head bowed, she didn't resist. She confessed everything. The network was larger than imagined. Other powerful men were arrested. Other schools were inspected. Other girls were saved. The trial. Within a few weeks, the trial began. The testimonies of Amara, Zara, Chioma, and Ngozi were presented. The evidence was overwhelming. Madame Folake was found guilty of conspiracy to commit human trafficking, intent to murder, endangering minors, complicity in Grace's death. She was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Chief Emeka and his accomplices received similar sentences. In the courtroom, parents wept. The girls held hands. Justice had spoken. Act 10: The Transformation. The change at St. Catherine's. At the school, winds of change blew. Ngozi and Chioma were hailed as unlikely heroes. During a special assembly, the principal before the gathered students and parents declared, "We must recognize the courage of two young girls who refused to remain silent. Thanks to their bravery, 2 lives were saved. In their honor, the school appoints them as assistants to the new dorm matron, Madame Chidinma." The hall applauded. Some students wiped away tears as Ngozi and Chioma received their sashes. They were tasked with reporting any suspicious activity, fostering dialogue among students, creating support teams in the dormitories. The healing. Zara and Amara, meanwhile, gradually resumed the thread of their lives, healing day by day. Zara, once the boldest, was now more composed and thoughtful. She spoke openly about her experience in assemblies, warning other girls of the dangers. Amara, still reserved, often visited Ngozi and Chioma to talk and find comfort. They both underwent therapy. The path to healing would be long, but they were moving forward. A new beginning. The school, once blind to the corruption that gnawed at it, became a place of hope. The changes were profound. Rules were revised. Inspections strengthened. A confidential counseling service was established. An anonymous emergency hotline was created. Safety training was provided. Parents were more involved. Students were encouraged to speak up, to watch out for one another. Every evening, lying in their beds, Ngozi and Chioma remembered how close they came to losing their friends, and how speaking up had changed everything. Conclusion: the lessons. The final message. The scars would never completely disappear. Grace wouldn't come back. Amara and Zara would always carry the marks of their trauma. But a new culture was born at St. Catherine's, a culture of courage, solidarity, and truth. All because two girls chose not to remain silent. Life lessons. 1. Silence protects predators. Madame Folake operated for years because everyone was afraid to speak. Silence isn't golden, it's complicity. 2. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Ngozi and Chioma were afraid. They trembled, but they spoke anyway. That's true courage. 3. Adults aren't always trustworthy. Madame Folake was an authority figure. But authority doesn't mean integrity. Learn to trust your instincts. 4. Easy money has a terrible price. Zara, Amara, and Grace were lured by money, clothes, outings, but the price was their safety, dignity, and for Grace, her life. 5. True friends speak up, even when it's hard. Chioma and Ngozi could have stayed quiet to avoid trouble. Instead, they risked everything to save their classmates. 6. The truth always comes out. Madame Folake's lies seemed invincible, but two determined students were enough to bring it all crashing down. 7. Your voice is more powerful than you think. Ngozi and Chioma were just ordinary students, but their testimony saved lives and destroyed a trafficking network. If you're in a situation where you see something wrong happening, speak up. Find a trusted adult. A teacher, a parent, a counselor, a family member, the police. Don't stay silent out of fear. Your silence could cost a life. If you're a victim of exploitation, know this. It's not your fault. You deserve help. There are people who will believe you. There's a path to healing. Your life has value. Where are they today? Ngozi became a lawyer specializing in children's rights. She works with NGOs to combat human trafficking in West Africa. Chioma is an investigative journalist. She exposes corruption networks in schools and institutions. Amara became a psychologist for traumatized children. She helps other victims heal. Zara runs a foundation that educates young girls about exploitation dangers. She shares her story in schools. Madame Folake is serving her life sentence in a maximum security prison. Chief Emeka and his accomplices share the same fate. St. Catherine's School has become a model of safety and transparency in Nigeria. No other exploitation cases have been reported since. Questions for you. Would you have had Ngozi and Chioma's courage? What would you do if you discovered a similar situation? Do you know someone who needs to hear this story? Which lesson struck you most? Share this story if you believe in the power of truth. You want to protect young girls. You refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice. Remember, your silence protects the guilty. Your voice saves the innocent.